to one projector. They had a technical issue here on Monday, and their technician can't get here till Friday. So we're down to one projector. We have y'all moved over to the right. Folks who are online, when there's a question and answer period, if you would type your questions into the chat, we will try our best to get to you. We have an exciting night tonight, so I want to get right to it. Yeah, you can dim the light a little bit. First, I want to introduce our board of directors. My name is Jill Hicks. I'm president of the Sussex Preservation Coalition, also known as SPC. That's a lot easier. We have Joe Pica with us, Rich Barrasso, Mary, Mary Bogie in the back. Mary, go ahead and wave. Judy Rose Seibert, Val Wood, and Maggie McLaughlin is not here tonight. And did I miss? Oh, and Pam. Pam could not be here tonight. So my husband, Bill Hicks, has been kind enough and brave enough and bold enough to try and run technology for us. So good luck, Bill. We're all with you. We're all behind you, you know. Yeah. Yeah. So now I would also like to introduce, we have some team members here who've done a lot of work for what we're going to see up here about 2024. So I'd also like to introduce Jim Dick, Mary Douglas, Steve Sinclair. Did I miss anybody? Who did I miss? Chris. Oh, Chris Basin is here. All right. Yeah, of course. So we have a few dignitaries. I'd like to go through and have them introduce themselves.
I am definitely not a dignitary. Hi, everybody. Mark Nardone. I'm the Director of Advocacy for Delaware Nature Society and friend of Ann's.
And good evening, everybody. Christophe Toulouse, the Executive Director of the Center for the Inland Bays, also a friend of Ann Campbell's.
I'm not a dignitary. My name is John Collier. I'm the mayor of Milton, Delaware.
Hi, Claire Snyder Hall, State Representative for RD14.
Who did I saw? Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Matt Lloyd. I just won the county council in the 1st district, so I'll be one of the 5 up there, and I'm really excited to be here tonight, and I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. I texted Matt today and told him he's the hero of the people. So yes, we will. I thought I saw Kim Hoey Stevenson. Is she still here? Oh, there she is. Yeah, really, right?
Hi, I'm Kim Hoey Stevenson. Oh, okay.
Former Planning and Zoning Commissioner and a big help to us. Yeah. Did I miss anybody? Going once, going twice? Okay. So one of the things that this is our first meeting of 2025, and I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at 2024 in review. If you remember, we said that at the beginning of 2024, we had this motto that said, let's do more in 24. So what did we actually get done? First of all, we worked alongside of the League of Women Voters to come up with, or I should say, even add to a program that we run in public libraries, HOAs, other clubs. We still run this if your club or organization is interested. So we came up with a program that we call Sussex County Government 101. And it's a 15-minute video of explaining how Sussex County works. And we went out right before the election to educate people on why this local election is so important. And our goal was to get out the vote. We also did more with education and advocacy through these meetings, bringing in our guest speakers. I'm very excited about our guest speaker tonight. But we brought in guest speakers from state agencies, local agencies, and from our allies. And this is, you'll remember, this is David Edgell, and one of my favorite slides, favorite, not favorite, is shows the growth in Sussex County compared to the other two counties. I wish Pam was here because she did an amazing job overhauling our website. And that was a big job, and she got it done. Let's see, we had some special events, and this is not all inclusive. This is just some of the highlights. We were at Coast Day over at University of Delaware, and I had so much fun participating in this and getting it together that I think next year when we do it, it's in October, you should all sign up to take a shift at this table because it truly is a lot of fun. We have this magic wheel and we had a lot of students and children, and it's a blast, and giveaways. We also had Arbor Day. We'll be doing that again this year. If someone cares to donate a tree, that would be great. This is out at Hudson Park. We dedicated a tree to Yulee in Sussex 2030 and the work that they've done and continue to do. We also had our first video contest. Actually, Judy Rose and Maggie McLaughlin really did the work on this, and it was a great success. And so we're planning to hold that or do that again in the fall. We lobbied hard to get the perimeter buffer codes amended. They didn't go far enough, but we did get 20 additional feet added to the forested buffer. That picture on the left just breaks my heart, but we are making progress. We also worked hard to get code, Sussex County Code 99-9C amended, also fondly known as Kim's List. But the council did not go far enough, and that was a settlement made by SPC and the developers. We all agree that it needed more work and more clarification. We also worked on the open space amendment. So no longer clubhouses and swimming pools and things of that nature are no longer considered a part of open space. However, we need more. We need more green spaces in our subdivision. So we'll continue to work away at that. We gave voice to public concerns regarding insufficient infrastructure and poor design. And the two that really became the poster children for this were at the top is North Star and at the bottom is Cool Spring Crossing. And it really brought home to the county and the public that the infrastructure has not kept up and is lagging behind the development. This is one of our favorite cartoons. Jim Patterson with the Cape Gazette has allowed us to use all his cartoons, and he's been a great ally. And then also, we had a lot of impact, we believe, with the election, not only just in District 3, but also Districts 1 and 2. And so we have 3 new council members, and we're very excited about that. And we're excited for what's coming in the next 4 years. So we accomplished a lot in 2024. And we also just recently sent out a survey. Many of you in this room, I assume, probably filled it out. And I'm going to ask Mary Bogie to come up and explain what the results were. But this survey is what's driving or giving us information to plan for 2025.
Well, thank you, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I will not do my best Richard Dawson impression. Family for you. I just dated myself, right? Thank you. So we had a lot of response, and thank you everybody for doing that, right? This really gives us a guide of, we're going to go in overdrive in 25, what we want to focus on and what we need to focus on. 52% of respondents are in District 3. I don't think that's a surprise, but it was 52%. And 33% in 4 and 5. The highest priority was regulatory and policy changes in Sussex that control land use. And I was at that fascinating county council meeting yesterday. I think I was one of 150 people. And get out there, go to a county council meeting. That's huge. New development applications and what we can do to influence development, design, and approval, and impacts of overdevelopment on local environment, ecology, and infrastructure. Again, and one other thing that's not up there, advocacy. That really came up high on this survey. People want to be involved. They want to go to county council, but they want to know how. So as we go into 2025, right, I think we're in week 2 or 3, that's going to be one of our focuses. We need people to get to county council. We need new faces to be in that audience. Like I said, I was in the first row and I got there at 20 of 9 or 20 of 10, excuse me, and it was packed. So it's very important that county council members, Matt, they see us in the audience. They know that we care and that we want to make a difference. And again, thank you for for filling out the survey. We'll be reaching out. I sent out a thank you email to everybody who wants to help us with fundraising or advocacy, and we'll be in touch shortly on that. If you didn't respond and you want to help out in a certain category, send SBC an email. SBC, I don't remember the email off the top of my head, but shoot us an email and we'll get in touch with you. Any questions? Again, thank you for answering and thank you for coming.
Mary and Pam put together that survey. They did a great job. We really appreciate the results. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rich Barrasso, who is helping us through the strategic planning process.
Good evening. So, you know, we saw a number of things that were accomplished in 2024. As Jill indicated, there was a lot more. I'll be honest with you, in many ways, we reacted to a lot in 2024. Being a new organization, we are endeavoring to put together a strategic plan for SPC that will focus on looking out 1 to 3 years so that we can restrain ourselves from reacting to the flavor of the month and really plan long term. A big part of a strategic plan is member input, and the survey was very helpful in getting feedback from the public in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. There are hundreds of examples of strategic plans. I worked 42 years in consumer goods. We had a strategic plan every year. The process changed every year. And it's not unlike other large corporations. And you'll hear complaints about a strategic plan is nothing more than what you put in a binder and put on your desk, and 1 year later you blow the dust off and you start all over again. So we are gonna crawl before we walk. We see 3 basic elements of our strategic plan, and that's a situational assessment first and foremost, and that's pretty straightforward. It's where are we today? So you can see where a survey helps in that regard. Can you advance that, Bill, or do I have to from here? That was the up arrow, wasn't it? So one of the tools that we're going to utilize going forward, how many people are familiar with the tool called a SWOT? Raise your hand. Get them up high. Get their names, okay? Show if you would. A SWOT is a tool to help you determine where you're at. And essentially, it's 4 boxes. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we had our very first session guided by Pam Cole a week ago, hosted by the great folks over at Center for Inland Bays. If you have never been to their headquarters there, if you've never sat in their conference room, just give a call and I'm sure they'll let you in. We had a full day. And what we did was we took a look at our organization today. What are our strengths? What do we do right? What do we do good? We also took a look at what our weaknesses are, what we don't do good enough. Obviously, The strengths are to be leveraged to overcome your weaknesses. The bottom two are opportunities and threats, and that is, what is the opportunity? Again, we're not talking about our goals over the next 3 years. We're talking about organizationally what we need to do to leverage our strengths, overcome our weaknesses, search out those opportunities, and make sure that we defeat any of the threats. So that's one tool that we're using. Secondly, as it relates to goals and objectives, the goals and objectives, how many people are familiar with what is referred to as SMART, setting goals and objectives SMART? Can you help us with that, Mark? Yes. Okay, so it's specific. So when you set a goal, it's got to be specific. It also has to be measurable. You have to know what you're going after. It's got to be attainable. If it's impossible, then it's futile to make it a goal. R is it's relatable to whomever is going to be impacted by it, and T is time bound. It has to have a beginning and an end. So anyway, over the next couple weeks, we are going to lay out what our 1 to 3 year goals are. Where do you want to be? What does the organization want to be? What do we want to accomplish in the next 3 years? And then finally, are the strategies. So when we choose a goal, there's a whole strategy in order to get there. Now, why is this all important? Why am I taking your time up to tell you about it? Well, that's one reason. For a couple of reasons. Number one, we owe it to you in terms of the time that you're investing in spending time with us, and spending time in writing letters to the editor, and spending time attending council meetings and activities. We owe it to you to let you know where we're going. Secondly, it's important to let the public know that, not just the people in this room that follow us. And then we have been fortunate the last 18 months to receive some grants. Organizations, sometimes individuals, sometimes organizations, that donate money to us. The number one question that an organization that has a 10 or a 15 or a $25,000 grant is, so tell us more about you. What's your plan? And really, we kind of looked at one another and said, we got a plan. We do it every month, right? We think that a strategic plan, it's well written and tracked and delivers results, is an excellent way in order to get organizations interested in helping us achieve our goals that may be aligned with theirs. So with that, we're in the process. Our second team meeting is the 27th. We're meeting with an outside consultant this week to kind of kick the tires a little bit, help us understand what kind of process we need. We have the benefit of a Chris Basin, who has written numerous strategic plans, and we want Chris's help in sizing up who we are, what we're trying to do, so that we don't spend a lot of time, chasing our tail. But more importantly, that credenza doesn't sit on that planning manual doesn't sit on a credenza and gather dust. If there's no questions, we can go ahead and move on. But again, it's really important that you're part of our strategic plan. You're part of it, because if you've got an idea or a thought, we want to hear from you, just like we did in the survey. Thank you.
I just want to point out another ally, Driscoll Drones. If you haven't joined his Facebook page, you really should. He does a great job with his drones, taking pictures and photographs from the air and report on what's going on around the county. So we thank Chris for that. Now, I just want to go back to one thing I mentioned earlier, and that was in the accomplishments. We talked about the election. I talked about the election of 2024. We are a 501c3. We did not actively go out and campaign for anybody. We can't. But what we did, and I think we did a good job of, was making sure people understood what the issues were. And I think we brought a lot of that to the forefront. So we did not actively campaign for anyone. So, how many of you heard about what happened yesterday in County Council? A lot of you. Okay. For those who did not, um, Matt Lloyd, who is the county council member and is in the back, proposed a moratorium, spoke about it. Matt, you can correct me if I get any of this wrong, but he spoke about a moratorium for the AR1 zone and for applications. In other words, let's not take any more applications in the AR1 zone until we get some things changed and improved in our codes and ordinances. Did I get that right? Cool. So when the word moratorium was mentioned, of course, the building community, the bankers, some of this public services came out and flooded county council. There were about 135 upstairs in the chamber, and there were about another 35 in the basement. And I think there were 39 people who spoke. In case you don't know, before every county council meeting, the public has 3 minutes to speak on anything that's within the county's council's purview. And so 39 people stood up and spoke, each taking 3 minutes. Some of us took a little longer. Made, so for 2 hours, the council listened to largely developers and bankers who were vehemently opposed to a county council moratorium. And I'm not sure they really understood what Matt was asking for, number one. And number two, a lot of their, what would the word be, conjectures, some of their analysis was overblown. So, so for example, they were comparing, I'll go into it because I do that. So for example, they were trying to say that a moratorium on applications would be as bad as the recession of 2008. They're completely unrelated. So that's the kind of thing that they were promoting. So what did SPC do? And I want to thank the board for really helping me put together our statement. But basically, we agreed with Matt. The county has reached a crisis point in overdevelopment, infrastructure lagging, and we have no protection for our natural environment. So I went through that. We also clearly stated that the election was an indictment of county council's record, that they haven't done anything for over a decade to straighten anything out about this. But we were concerned that a moratorium might negatively impact council's ability to make significant change, and that a moratorium right now is probably premature because we have 3 council members trying to get their feet on the ground and get running. Although we do appreciate Matt's point. Matt, come on, you can come up and speak. Yeah. Can I finish the slide, or do you need to interject here? Okay. So SPC requested 3 things from county council. We want a commitment from them in 30 days that they will take these codes and amendments that need to be written and changed seriously. We want a commitment from them that they're going to work on it. We said we want a plan from them in 3 months. What is it that they're going to do to get started on this action? And then we want to see progress towards that in 6 months. We're not saying it all has to be written because we know that it's not going to happen that fast, but we at least want to see this as a priority, and we want to see them start on the planning process. We said if those milestones are not met, then we would call for a moratorium on new subdivision applications, and that's the stand that we took. We also offered a collaborative effort among stakeholders that we would help, we would do anything to help organize, or, I mean, if it comes down to writing these amendments, we'll do it. We'll do the work. We just want them to get moving. Matt, 2 minutes? Okay.
All right, hello everybody. Yeah, so you did a good job summarizing what happened. Basically, what I called for was a very specific pause, an administrative pause on applications being submitted specifically in AR1 lands. Now, why did I do that? There was a mantra for it. I didn't just come in and try to, ham hand the situation as some have put it. but specifically because of the campaign and what was said during the campaign and what the voters indicated they wanted in the campaign, it was the large emphasis was it was detrimentally affecting the farmland. It was pushing out our workforce because the 2 to the acre way that we build right now, these homes end up being 500 plus $1,000 homes. That is not affordable for our middle and low income families here. That is why we're probably 10 to 13,000 affordable workforce houses short. It consumes inordinate amounts of farmland while still not meeting the land use needs of the people. Okay, and it puts a lot of pressure on the ag industry because as these developments proliferate out in the farmland, it chokes out all the farmers in between, and so then they face inordinate pressure to sell. So again, like without coming in and just trying to you know, sort of just hit the problem with a blanket moratorium, which is what they tried to twist it into. Okay, they kind of fear mongered, showed up in mass, which is understandable because they had the, this is it by at face value, it looks like it is going to affect their livelihood. So it's very understandable why they showed up the way they did. Now, maybe I failed to articulate more specifically. I don't think that's possible because I was very specific the first day that I mentioned it and then tried to clarify in yesterday's meeting. But so that's what happened. And I guess the takeaway is uh, this, if nothing else, instills a sense of urgency. I think we all agree with that. I think people have been saying this for the better part of 10 years. Like I said yesterday, this is what people want: an inflection point. They want a decision, a decisive point. That's what this was intended to be. Not that we have the solutions today. I think there's plenty of ideas. SPC, I very much look forward to like hearing, the group's thoughts. And there's a lot of smart people with a lot of brain power in this room and elsewhere that are willing to come to the table and sort of chiefs around the fire and contribute to really fixing what we're facing in my mind, which is a kind of catch-22 scenario where in one sense you have this, rapid development of AR1 lands, pressure on the ag industry, the inadequacy of roads, the non-dualization of roads that should have been dualized years ago, and that feeling of overdevelopment and the shortage of infrastructure, while at the same time we lack inventory for, again, our residents, Sussex County residents, who are continuing to be pushed to the west side and inevitably out of the state. And so there's, we're not the first county to face those problems, but it seems like it's only been recently, and large part and due to SPC's effort and Sarge and others, that we're at this inflection point. It's like the appetite is there. Even the developers, the home builders, the business community are ready to come and contribute to it, and ultimately make Sussex a better place. So that the moratorium is more or less the vessel to try to help get us there. Again, I want to clarify, I'm probably over 2 minutes, that it was not about, it wouldn't have killed the economy, it wouldn't have lost people jobs, okay, because the pipeline is so full of applications. They tried to say basically that, if say the foundation was in and the framer contractor was ready to go and frame up the walls, that, the county was going to come in and red tape the project and say, you can't, everybody go home right now. That's what they, basically tried to paint this thing as, which is not what it was. And so, I'll continue to clarify that. I will continue to work with the other council members and the stakeholders that have an interest in this. And again, with the big brains in this room. So I really appreciate your all's efforts. Keep it up. It does have an influence, believe me. I'm learning that even more as this goes on. And so, but appreciate the chance to speak.
And now I'm going to ask Joe Pica to introduce our guest speaker.
Matt just referred to a lot of smart people in the room and a lot of brain power, and we've brought a speaker with both of those things to add to our collective ability here. Ann Canby was born in Delaware, went to college in Massachusetts, later worked in the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, has worked in Washington, D.C. in the Carter administration's Department of Transportation, worked in Trenton while bicycling to work as New Jersey's Commissioner of Transportation, in Dover for 8 years as Secretary of Delaware's Department of Transportation. That's when I first met her in 1994 when she was a member of Tom Carper's cabinet. She was a hard-charging, determined figure whose knowledge and intensity could be quite intimidating. Isn't that right, Christoph? That was Anne, right? And still is Anne, fortunately. Anne has not solely been a government official. She's worked to reform Congress, to train advocates in how to achieve change, sought to revitalize rail transportation in America, and served as chair of the board of the Delaware Historical Society, among the many other things that she's done. A couple of quotes from Anne I found from a really excellent interview of her. On transportation more broadly, she has said, there are proper roles for walking, biking, transit, automobile, intercity rail, freight, rail, air, and marine. And we have to think in a more integrated, multimodal way if we are serious about addressing safety, congestion, urban form, and ultimately the climate challenge. You did say that, and it sounded awfully impressive. I don't. As a reformer, Anne has said, achieving change requires patience, persistence, and listening. It takes time to have the conversations and learn other perspectives. If you aren't willing to listen to each other, change gets really hard to accomplish. And that, of course, is one of the things we're discovering here in Sussex County, just in the last 24 hours. And on achieving change, she has said, you have to step out of your comfort zone if you want to see change. I've never had a problem doing that. Don't be afraid to try new things. You might fail once in a while, but you also will have a bunch of successes, and that's what moves things forward. Anne has received many recognitions during her career, including induction into the Delaware Women's Hall of Fame in 2022. As you were here, she brings this wealth of knowledge and experience to bear in rethinking Delaware, the project she's going to discuss with us tonight. We're fortunate to have Anne Canby as tonight's guest speaker. Anne.
That's very nice, Joe. My glasses are all screwed up, so. Okay. All right. Well, where is the clicker to change? Oh, great. Okay, that does it. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. So, rethinking Delaware. Rethinking Delaware. When I finally pulled the needle out of my arm to get out of Washington about 3 or 4 years ago, I thought, well, what on earth am I going to do here? And I came back and I thought, well, climate's a really kind of critical issue. Okay, can you hear me anyway? No, okay. Climate's a kind of critical issue. I had a few conversations and figured out that that was not going to be a driver at that point for getting real change in Delaware. A little better now, but still maybe not the top of the list. So I thought, what are all the issues that are driving people crazy right now? So we came up with some things, and talking to Christoph and Mark and Joe and a bunch of other people, I'll name in a few, started thinking about how do we pull together a group to really get land use and transportation under control. By the way, I'm sort of a recovering DelDOT secretary. Sort of, maybe not quite there yet. Anyway, so I have lots of things to think about in that realm. But so we had some more conversations, try to figure out how we had to pull people together. And so this group has sort of come up. We are, first of all, a very informal coalition. We are not organized in any way. We have calls every couple of weeks. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do next. We have no organization. We just have people who care, just like you down here. And by the way, congratulations on your, I can't say election success, but anyway, your work to create the change. It was noticed upstate, fairly seismic changes down here. And I will say, when I was at Del Dot, Christoph was at Denrec, we sure as hell would have loved to have had SPC working to help us do some stuff down here. It was a Zippo, I can tell you. Zippo 30 years ago. So maybe we have some chances now. So what do we want to try and do? We decided, because we were part of 1995, this is telling you how long ago all this happened, putting together something called Shaping Delaware's Future, which required, I think, the comprehensive plans for the first time. Everybody had to do one. So that got started, and a little bit happened, and then Carper's term was over, and Ruth Ann Minner came in, and Livable Delaware came in, and it's not clear that a whole lot happened as a result of that. Then there was an energy plan when Jack Markell was governor, and then I'm not aware of anything after that. I wasn't paying a lot of attention because I was doing stuff down in DC or around the country. So we decided the issues right now that everybody seems to care about, and they're not unique to Delaware: affordable and diverse housing, transportation options, public health outcomes, climate resiliency, and a whole bunch of other environmental protection issues. If we could pull together people from all those, what? Oh, I didn't change a thing. Oh, shit. Here, I'll try and do it. I'll just pay more attention. Sorry. I haven't done this for a while, folks. So those are the issues we wanted. Where do I point this? Oh, I did it. Okay. So this gives you a sense of who's involved. So we've got not only Christoph as a former cabinet secretary, but Rita Landgraf, who was health and social services. I got on the phone with her. Oh my God, yes, we got to talk about physical activity, our health outcomes, blah, blah, blah. That led to some other people. We've got a couple of ex-Den wreckers. Joe, as we mentioned already, we got Sierra Club, Community Foundation, Housing Alliance, Nature Society, Mark, Healthy Communities Delaware, Milford Housing and Development Corporation. I met with those folks not too long ago. We'll talk about more of that a little later. Nature Conservancy of Delaware, and then of course all three of you down here, SPC 2030, Sussex 2030, and SARG. So we're building. We're always open to more. There's some gaps I think we have. We need to keep filling in. And so as I go back, say it's all about land use and transportation, because every single one of those issues that I mentioned before all has a connection with land use and transportation. In some way or another, they are barriers to achieving the outcomes of whatever that organization may be. Is that Senator Huxtable who just walked in here? Greetings. So, and land use, first of all, you remember, you've heard, I'm sure, Tom Carper say Delaware is the 49th largest state. We don't have a lot of land. And so we got to be very careful how we take care of it. And so smart land use, we think, is a good policy to think about, because it is a cost-effective way to manage a number of these other issues that we're trying to deal with, whether it's housing, climate, all the things I mentioned, resilience, improving our lives in a whole bunch of other different ways. So what we want to try and accomplish, and talk about reaching for the stars, okay? We are. We want to see Delaware move away from what it's been doing for the last, how many decades? Since I was a kid, probably. That's a long time ago. To more compact, mixed use, walkable, transit supportive neighborhoods and communities. That's where we need to go, because it's much more efficient. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's where we're trying to get the conversation started, to even think about what on earth does that even mean. So we want to focus rethinking Delaware's efforts at the state level, because we think the state could do a lot more than it does now. And we're trying to get our arms around what is the leverage that exists now, and how can we point out to people that it might be good if they used some of it. But first, we got to get people to understand what the impact is of land use, our land use and transportation policies on all those issues that I raised a moment ago, because that is what begins to tie it together and get you thinking much more broadly. Everybody tends to think in silos, and you don't think about these things in an integrated fashion. Public health community cares about our transportation because we've basically designed walking out of our lives unless you get in a car and go to a park. You don't do it on a daily basis because it's not part of your life. That has huge health impacts. Housing, we all know about that crisis. So the state puts a lot of effort into something called state strategies. Nice guidance, no teeth whatsoever. So you can consider it. To me, that's one of the wimpy words in our language. Consider. Not much happens, you know. If you just I looked at it, I don't need to do that. And there's no consequences. So we're trying to think through. This is getting into touchy territory, okay? What could we do to have some consequences at the state level if people don't do what they say they're going to do in their comp plans, in their zoning and whatnot? Now that's a huge conversation, requires a huge audience. And I don't know how willing our new governor is going to want to be to take this on. We're going to test those waters, I can assure you. But we want to make it easy to do the right thing in the right place. I mean, we want to make it really hard to do the wrong thing in the wrong place. Barbell. So we'll see if we can. Where am I? I'm sorry, this is really sampler. I talked about our goals. Okay. Okay, so health and aging. Here's just a few facts. Okay, this is what you're facing in Sussex is maybe just a little more extreme than I know. Not so. I've been warned. Health. We have the 5th highest per capita health costs in the state. Who knew that? In the country, sorry, yeah. Who knew that? What are the implications of that? Does that hurt our economic competitiveness when you're trying to bring jobs in here? What's the impact? Excuse me. We have the highest rate of death from stroke. We have the 8th highest obesity rate. We have the 11th highest diabetes rate. Those things all add to more health complications. So that raises our costs. Part of it, not all of it, but part of it is because we've designed, as I said, physical activity out of our lives. We just don't get enough physical activity in general. So we also have, and you feel this more than the rest of the state as well, a growing part of our population of people over 65. That brings a whole new set of issues for us. 30 years ago, I asked Bob Stickles, who was then county administrator, I said, Bob, what are you going to do with all these old people when they can't drive? He said, they already can. Here we are, 30 years later, right? Same problem. So, all right, climate. Again, Sussex probably a little more affected than maybe some other parts of the state, but all of us are affected. And that picture up there is a pretty good illustration of some of the challenges we face. Flooding right here in Lewis, flooding in Milton, flooding in a lot of places, flooding in Southbridge up in Wilmington. And two big industries here, agriculture and tourism, are particularly threatened. Agriculture is a huge industry in this state, as you all well know. Tourism, also the same. How do we protect those? Those are economic drivers in Sussex County. DENREC commissioned a study several years ago, which our friends at the Sierra Club were able to FOIA to get because they didn't want to release it, that said by the year 2100, Delaware is going to face $69 billion in damage from climate. That is an outstandingly understandable, outrageous number. But it's so big, people can't really digest it. The report's a little obtuse, and so trying to figure out what's going to happen in the next 5 years, we have to dig into that a little bit, and hopefully we'll get Greg Patterson to help us out there. But those are some things that we've got to pay more attention to because the economic impact on our state is going to be huge. Right here, 43,000 acres of woodlands lost between 98 and 21. And the population doubled at the same time. We can't keep that going on. You've spoken many times, Jill, about protecting these resources, and I'll talk about it more in a minute too. Housing, we all know about this problem. 80% of the people in this state cannot afford the median price of a house. It's outrageous. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Christoph. Oh, here, no, there, over there, okay. 19,000 There's different numbers around. I think it's 21, 19, something like that. Anyway, shortage of units, of housing units in Delaware. Low income earners, first time buyers, senior people priced out of the market. Single family homes comprise about 75, 80% of all the housing stock in Delaware. We have no diversity in our housing, let alone affordability. So that's a huge problem. The numbers for Sussex, and someone I think said it, somewhere over 13,000 houses need to be built by 2030. That's 5 years from now. That's a lot of houses in order to just make the need. And 20% of that needs to be rental. All right, transportation. This is one of the little hidden facts that people don't really think about. Transportation for many households is the number 2 household expenditure. People don't focus on that. But it is in Delaware because you have to have a car to get anywhere. Well, there's a wonderful group out in Chicago called the Center for Neighborhood Technology. They've put together a housing and transportation fact sheet. And for Delaware, the average expenditure is about 48% for housing and transportation in the state. In Sussex, the transportation piece is about 28%. The national norm for expenditures is 15%. So imagine what that does to a lower income household when they have to put that much money into transportation. It takes away from housing, takes away from food, clothing, medical, etc. So it's a huge burden that we really haven't ever paid a lot of attention to because we just assume we get in the car and go. I talked to a guy yesterday, has 2 kids and a wife. They got 4 cars and they're driving all over the place. I mean, that's not abnormal in Delaware. That is not abnormal, but it's a huge cost. And the average number, according to CNT, is about $15,000 for transportation. When your income is $50,000 and you got another piece that goes to housing, there's not much left over for anything else. So that cost of transportation is something we have not factored in at all in terms of thinking about how we develop. We just build as though the car is the only form of transportation. Then we have to fit in bike, ped, transit. Not a really good idea. On top of the cost, we seem to be right up in the championship list of killing people trying to walk, which is a pretty bad rate as well. We're about 5th in terms of the most dangerous roads. I think a couple of years ago, we had the 3rd highest pedestrian fatality rate in the country. That's pretty shocking. Then, of course, there's all the externalities that we're having to deal with. I mean, Delaware, people like to come here. How many people lived here in 1995? See, not too many of you. We'll see how people feel after everybody gets their reassessment tax bills. That may change the appeal of Delaware for some folks. We'll see. But so that's been a great boon for us in a way, but it's also created a whole bunch of new challenges, which I would say we weren't particularly ready to deal with. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, our population is getting older. On top of that, COVID has changed how we go to work or don't. It's changed how we buy things. So we have shopping patterns and e-commerce and all of that, and more upstate maybe than down here, warehouses popping up all over the place, much to much people's horror. And then, of course, we have the whole quality of life issue and the threats of climate change and what that's going to do to us. And here's just one example, a map that you can see on the left-hand side, all that blue, that's where people live. The problem is the yellow is where all the jobs are. So we have a huge mismatch just geographically, and we're not very efficient. If you just look at that map, it points it out very, very clearly. I did some work out in Minnesota years ago when they built the Mall of America. Some of you may be familiar with that. This huge mall outside of Minneapolis. We did an overlay, the mall for the low-wage jobs, low-income households and neighborhoods, and the transit system. Complete mismatch. So people, we got a problem. Our employees can't get to work. So it's those kind of things. If we thought a little more intelligently, we could avoid those problems and make life a whole lot better for a whole lot more people. So that's the mismatch. Okay. So what are some of the barriers Clearly, at the state level, inadequate public transportation. We got broad housing problems in terms of the cost of getting through all the process, the lack of diversity in the types of housing, not strong enough consideration of the impacts from climate, management of stormwater. And while we have open space and ag land preservation programs, they need to be much stronger and probably much better funded just because of the demand and the changes that have happened since those programs were put in place. I would say, Del Dot, don't kill me. The planning process is probably a little out of date, not caught up with the way we need to be thinking more multimodally about it. They talk about it. I'm not sure they really understand how to walk about it. But I'm not that close to it, so I don't want to get into it too much. But Office of State Planning, and I was pleased to hear the other day that our new governor has said he wants to increase the authority of that planning office. And I think that would make a big help and would help get some people's attention. Touchy subject. Nobody likes to have be told what to do, particularly the counties don't like the state telling them what to do. So we got to deal with that conversation. And that's one of the things we'll be thinking about at Rethinking, to try and help the governor figure out how to do that without upsetting every apple cart in the state. Lack of monitoring of comprehensive plans. I asked Dave Edgell a little while back, I said, do we have any idea if we added up the implications, the financial implications for the state of all the comp plans, what it would be? Not really. I thought, really? The state has a huge fiscal exposure, which I don't think it's even totally aware of. So that's not so great either. And then overall, the Quality of Life Act, Joe reminds me, was put together in about 1988 when Newcastle County had the same kind of problems you have now down here when the banking people all rushed to town. So it was there. 95, we did some changes, as I said, with the comp plan. And I don't think a whole lot has been done to change it since then. And it's way overdue. And so we're going to be looking at how to strengthen that language so that when you sign off on a comp plan, you have some sense that they're going to pay attention to it and implement what it says. I was meeting yesterday with a banker guy who does a lot of housing stuff. The comp plan, he said, it was like a blank when I asked him about it. I said, no, I don't really know about that. I said, well, you know, it might be a good idea. But it is amazing that we're all in our little silos, and those guys that finance housing, they don't know about it. They just want to build something. So it's a challenge. We got to figure out how to bring people together so they understand the total. He walked out of that meeting that we had a little bit sort of, wow, this is more complicated than I thought. I said, yeah, it's better. He's a lot harder than just putting a financing deal together. So join the club, buddy. At the county level, we got land use issues and zoning issues up and down the state. I'm on a transition team for the new county executive on land use, and we got some issues up there, let me tell you. As I said before, diversity of housing, almost non-existent. We're not paying enough attention, enough attention to, I should look at this rather than that, to the impacts of climate, protecting our open space, stormwater management. How do we strengthen that? Excessive parking requirements at the county levels. Look around you and look at how much land is devoted to parking cars. There's a great book called Parking Paradise, I think, Paved Paradise, how parking has shaped our landscape, by a fellow in New York called Henry Graber. It's a great book. And you read that and you think, oh my God, we devote more land to parking lots than we do to buildings. Just fly over and look and see. I mean, along Route 1, the parking lots are 3 times more than the buildings. It's the same upstate. You're not any different from the rest of us. But it's a problem because, as I said earlier, we have limited land. Where are we going to put the people that are going to come here? It's not going to stop. We got to just think a little differently about it. So we don't always pay enough attention to the bike walk aspect of things. So another barrier at the county and local level is, no, it's not a barrier. Okay, where do we want to go? Well, first of all, I think recognizing the interdependence of all these things on each other brings together a set of interests and people that we hope, this is a test, we have no idea, that will get attention in Dover. You got health people, housing people, environmental people, older people. We're going to get some equity people into this because that's very important as well. And others as well. We might even get some home builders, who knows, to rethink how we think about all this stuff. Once we get people's attention to understand all of that, then I think, and I've done a lot of this around the country with people, what is it that you want your community to look like? If you can't agree on that, Rich, you referred to that a little bit. If you can't agree on that, you don't know where you're going, so you can't get there. So you got to have a sense of what it is you want to accomplish. And you got to bring people on board, enough of them, so that you can get it done. We'll talk about that in a minute too. So we want to see less reliance on just autos and much more availability and making it easy to walk, bike, and take transit. That picture, by the way, is Hyannis. It's just a picture. You know, you've been through, I don't know how many scenario plannings you guys have done. They show you pictures and they show you the single family home with a lawn and no landscaping. You like that? Then they show you something that's, 20 houses per acre. You like that? And it's beautifully landscaped. Oh yeah, we love that. Then you tell them what the density is. They, oh no, we don't like that. So there's some educating, and I think you all referred to that as well. So how do we get there? As you said, we got to think outside. Maybe it was quoted me. I said, you got to think outside the box. You got to push the envelope a little bit. You got to raise issues like you have, Mr. Lloyd. People don't want to talk about, but it kicks them in the butt and makes them get thinking about what they got to do. And you keep the fire on them so they can't run away from it, right? We got to have some tough conversations. Look, if this was easy, we'd have fixed it a long time ago. It's not easy. There's a whole lot of different issues, a whole lot of different interests. Bringing all of that together into one coherent strategy, it's hard, but it's worth it because it's our future, it's our kids' future, it's our grandkids' future. If we don't do it, I don't even want to think what their lives are going to be like. So we got to figure out how to get better coordination between the private development that goes on and the infrastructure that needs to happen. It's not just transportation, it's water, sewer, all the utilities that aren't even public. Getting everybody, as I said before, to recognize the interdependency of all these other issues on land use and transportation and our overall quality of life. Reducing our reliance on auto and making sure that we get the state's authority on its comp plan work that it does with everybody, but also on the state strategy so they actually have some teeth. And we're going to be working on that. I don't know how far we'll get. This is a heavy lift. Believe me, it's a heavy lift, Christoph, right? It's a heavy lift. But why bother to go through the exercise if nobody pays any attention to it? And it's not just the counties and the municipalities, it's the state agencies as well. I mean, what's Del Dot doing planning out on Route 9 for something that's in Zone 4? Good question. Anyway, I'm not there, so I can't answer that question. Let's see. All right, we're repeating here. But as I said before, using the leverage of the state, get into these conversations we haven't want to have, take some actions to get the state's role stepped up. I mean, I've been asking, what the governor certifies the comp plans. What if they don't do anything with them, the people who wrote them? Can you decertify them? Does it mean anything? I don't think it does, but I have no idea. So we're going to be checking out on stuff like that. All right. Now, it can't all be sticks. We got to have some carrots. What are some of the incentives that we get people to make it easy to do the right thing in the right place? Make it harder, as I said before, to do the wrong things in the wrong place. So how do we sort of tilt the scales so that it naturally goes where it should go as opposed to where it just does because this is the way water flows, So incentives on protecting open space and the natural habitat, trying to get a wetlands bill done. 30 years ago, we were talking about doing that. is even more urgent now because of the federal action, which wiped out a lot of protections. So we got some challenges that we're sort of behind on. Changing the way we develop our land so that we can actually have walking, biking, and transit trips. Right now, we make it impossible or totally uncomfortable. I used to show a slide, horrified my people, where a biker would come and get ready to cross the road, and he'd run into a guardrail. I said, "What transport agency did that?" Hello, not too smart. Anyway, why does all this matter? This is where it gets kind of interesting to me. First of all, I don't think the state realizes what it's doing to itself in terms of fiscal impact, because as I said before, the state pays for a whole lot more things than most other states do around the country. I mean, we pay all the roads except for those incorporated municipalities. That all belongs to Delta. I used to say I paid more attention dealing with basketball rings on cul-de-sacs than I did I-95. The cost of household is high, as I mentioned, for what we're doing. Economic drivers in Sussex are really threatened. And as someone on one of our rethinking calls said, we've really lost our quality of life here. And that's why everybody came here. I can remember, this will really date me, when on Route 1, the only thing out there was Midway. That was it. That was it. And there was nothing going down Route 1. There used to be a restaurant down there called the Boathouse. Probably nobody remembers that. That was a long time ago. Anyway, it has changed, and it's going to change, and we're not going to shut it down, but we got to do a much better job. So advocacy. One of the things I thought about as we have thought about putting together rethinking, could SPC pull together that same diverse coalition of people here? The housing people, the health people, climate people, get as many political interests as you can to come together, because I think that gives you political legs. And much harder. I put together a rail coalition in Washington, which was labor, Class 1 railroads, Amtrak, all the suppliers and whatnot. And we would get agreement on something. We'd go up to Capitol Hill, and the committee staff would say, "Man, it's so nice to have you all agreeing on stuff. It makes our life so much easier." And that is so true. But that is true for a county council person as well as it is for a senator or a member of Congress. Get the constituents together, work it out, hammer it out, and then go and say, look, all of us support this. It really makes the job harder for you, makes it much easier for them. So that's something just I put on your thinking for SPC. You've done a great job so far. As I said earlier, I'd love to have had you here 30 years ago. And so I think, folks, that it's time for you to tell me I'm crazy, go home, get out of here, and let's have some discussion.
So, okay, we have a couple questions.
Thank you. Your perennial questioner. Hi, I'm Johannes Sayer. I'm from Lewis. So we've been coming here since '92, but we only moved here full time in '21. And the last 3 years, I've been trying to figure out what's going on. We came here from the Hudson Valley in New York, where there's a lot more activism, a lot more public discourse, very vibrant. The bone I'm chewing on right now is change in the economy here, and I want you to tell me whether I know what I'm talking about and what the impacts are. So my perception from news reports and also some anecdotal personal observations, agriculture is declining in significance in the economy, particularly the Sussex economy. One of the effects of that is producing a supply of land. All those families want to sell their land, they're not going to use it anymore for ag. Then there's demand for the boomers, and so you have huge critical mass of economic activity in housing. So if I try and frame my question concisely, if that is true, if that phenomenon is actually happening, that agriculture is declining in significance as a contributor to the Sussex economy in particular, it's creating a vacuum. What do you see on the horizon to fill that vacuum? What would we like to have fill that vacuum? And what are the effects? How do we create communities that you're describing in the presence of that trajectory of the economy? What's going to fill the hole?
I don't know that the economy ag economy is falling in Sussex. Somebody once told me, as long as we're eating chickens, we're gonna have a poultry economy down here. And I just had to look at a little rail bridge over the C&D Canal, which is in dire need of some improvement, and had no idea that part of what comes across that bridge several times a week is a whole bunch of ingredients that goes into poultry food. Who knew? I mean, it's a very complicated little mixture of things that they are totally dependent on. If that bridge goes out, they're screwed. So I don't think ag is that declining. I mean, Russ, do you have any thought on that? I don't really think it is. But
Sure, I think there are certainly challenges with the ag industry, but I don't think it is declining. It's actually a very important part of Sussex, and it would not be something that I think anybody in the state nor in this county would want to see. We actually passed a bill last year that provides additional crop insurance based on climate change. So it's one of those industries we want to keep, and so the state is very focused on how we can help that industry. And just briefly, I think with a lot of, I apologize.
Go ahead.
With
State
a lot of the
Senator.
folks that are moving in, and we need additional services, I think you're seeing where the healthcare industry is going to be a big factor and big employment sector moving forward, because we actually have the highest number of rural seniors than any county in the United States. And those seniors need healthcare. We need more healthcare as you get older. And so I think you'll start seeing that industry start to be a little bit more robust.
Good. I mean, this is clearly a great question for Don Clifton, who's about to become the ag secretary. I mean, I had conversations with him back a while ago, and one of the big challenges is you get to the third generation of a family that's farming, unlike my dear buddy Jim Bennett, who's already conserved his farm. If you like peaches and blueberries, see this man, he's got the best ones in Delaware. They don't want to farm anymore, and that's their asset. So that's a huge problem we got to figure out. How do we keep that land? And one of the things Don to me said, I want to figure out how to help my farmers make money. I've been told, I had a farm a long time ago down in the lower eastern shore of Maryland, and when they used to have unit trains of strawberries coming off the peninsula, going into the markets, Philadelphia, New York, Washington, wherever. We don't grow food like that anymore, could we? I don't know, but there's a thing that has to be thinking about. If we're not doing corn, soybeans, and wheat, what else are we going to grow? Could put some solar up, but who knows? Anyway, so we're not going to give up on the ag business, and we got to figure out how to grow differently so we can accommodate all the folks that are coming in and take care of their medical needs as well. And go back to that jobs housing mismatch, because I've heard many a story where people said, my daughter got interviewed and got accepted for a job to be a nurse at baby, but she couldn't find a place to live, so I didn't take the job. So that's a problem. Lots of hands up.
Thank you for all this great information.
Sorry, I hope
these
it's not
ideas.
overload.
I attended the county council meeting yesterday, and about, say, 25 or 30 of the 39 presenters were young people representing various groups. And I can tell that there was a CEO and a CFO who said, you get your butt to that county council and oppose that thing because we want to keep our bottom line. And then they made a very soft position that they wanted to come to the table and help. So you talked about heavy lifting. How do we get to change the hearts and minds of that CFO and CEO to get them to come to the table and create affordable housing instead of huge super developments? How do we get the coordination of paying for the infrastructure and all those things? This is, I guess, the unanswered questions at the moment. But
if it were easy, I could tell you. We're going to try and find out how to start moving the needle at the state level.
County council's facing that, and they have a 3-6 month timeline,
right.
apparently.
Well, there are all kinds of organizations out and about that have been doing this stuff in other parts of the country. Smart growth, it's called, and figuring out how to rethink and redevelop, infill, and create different communities. And getting some new brains in here would be a good idea to get some new ideas and bring some new ways of thinking about how to do this without destroying our community in the process. So I think that's one way, and I've suggested, I don't know if you've had time to look at it, the Smart Growth America has a zoning reform center, and they do work with people, and that might be an avenue to reach out to them, and I can help get it connected to say, come help us think about how we do this. How do we do zoning so that we don't keep messing up our quality of life and that we can provide for the needs that we have, whether it's housing or health care or healthy living or whatever it is. So, I mean, this is a hard conversation. It's got to involve a lot of different people, but it's worth doing because it's the future.
I think you're spot on one of your comments, which is that the state office of planning has to have more authority over the implementation of the comprehensive plans. But I think there's another step there, and that is that the state has to have a strategic plan for itself. And within that strategic plan, the counties develop their own so that there's an alignment between them. I had the rude awakening when I moved here in 2020 to stand before the county council and argue an appeal of a planning and zoning commission decision to approve a development of a piece of land next to my community. And that piece of land was most of the time underwater, and it had been bought by the owner's grandfather or something as a hunting property. It was a little tiny thing. And we fought tooth and nail. And what I learned in that process is that the zoning code are details. But unless there's an overarching understanding of where you're heading in terms of your development, the zoning code operates in a vacuum. So you have to first have that overview idea of what you want your world to look like. And as an aside note, the League of Women Voters, in its advocacy campaign this year, has a picture of, it's got housing, health, and economy, I think, is the third one. And they all intersect. Education, I think, is the other one. They all intersect at some point. So that's another key point that you've made today, that these issues intersect. But there's a lot here, and I would think that a targeted approach to get a statewide strategic plan would be very much in order for this state, because otherwise these problems are just going to continue to snowball and take us down further than we already are. And I think you're going to see an exodus of seniors. They're going to leave because they need health care, they need housing, they can't all afford $750,000 homes, and they also are going to need at some point assisted living facilities. They're going to need community CCRCs. They're going to need other places to live besides their single family homes, and a service system that gets them to either stay in their home or go somewhere else. The Lodge in Rehoboth and Lewis aren't going to be enough to handle the tide that's coming our way. So I think if you, well, it's questions, thoughts, and ideas, so I'm expressing a thought, is that the focus of the effort should be to get a statewide plan and then have the counties develop their own plans consistently and ensure that the state has authority over the implementation and that they get done. Otherwise, why bother?
Why bother? Exactly right.
I'd be happy to help you with
one
that.
One of the things that's going on right now, the state strategies were last updated, I'm not sure when, but it was a while ago, right? And this Office of State Planning is in the process of updating the state strategies. So that's one first importance. I think they've been down here and done a presentation loaded with data, talking about all the things we have to be thinking about. But it is, you're right, connecting the strategies to the comp plans and then to the state agencies as well. And that connection, as I said before, it's consider, which I said is a wimp word. How do we get that connection stronger so that everybody has to do it? It's not just the local governments, it's also the state agencies as well. That gets more cohesion. That will start what you're talking about, I think.
Yes, I have a question about land use and home rule. And, natural resources in our state don't recognize political boundaries, whether it's a property line, town or county lines. Wildlife habitat doesn't care where a line exists. in a state as small as Delaware, how can we address land use issues on a statewide basis when the county and home rule can disregard what the state is recommending?
Well, I think I'm going to let Christoph talk about this too, but I think that it also goes back to what I just said. The state strategies addresses the protection of these critical areas for a whole number of reasons, and they need to be incorporated into the county plans. They need to be incorporated into the zoning of the county plans. And that's how you tie it all together. But until we make that connection hard and tight, you don't get it. You want to say anything?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people think is a constitutional right is home rule. Actually, these are authorities, these are abilities, these are planning capacities that are granted to the localities by the state. There may be some nuance there, and there may be some, but these are all decisions. And I think it's fair to say that the Commonwealth of Virginia, if you're a local government or a county, you have virtually no power relative to Richmond in the state, or the Commonwealth, I should say. So it varies, it depends. But I think the power that the localities and the counties have in Delaware is by virtue of a decision that was made in the past by the state government that they would have those authorities. And I will say, to balance this out, I don't think any of us in the end want all of the land use decision making happening in Dover. I think what you need is, cohesion, coordination, but an understanding, as Ann put it, of what kind of Delaware do we want to live in. And I will just tell you what a local bank president told me the other day. He said, Christoph, I love what the Center for the Inland Bays does, because if you don't succeed, I'm going to go out of business. The point is if we continue on as we are, we take that goose that lays all those golden eggs that in part has brought a lot of people here, created an economy and wealth and opportunity for a whole lot of folks. But if we keep doing that, that goose is going to die, and we're going to then be wondering where our economy went, where our climate resilience went, where the bays went. Because guess what? We're the lowest lying portion of the lowest lying state in the country. We're extraordinarily vulnerable. So if we develop land the wrong way, we're just putting ourselves at greater peril. So anyway, this is part of Ann's point earlier, is getting the state to buck up a bit and say, you know what? We do have an interest here. We're paying a whole lot of money to support local land use decisions, to support the infrastructure that comes after the development decision is made. And there's something about that, if you just think about it rationally, that just doesn't make sense. So anyway, this is part of the dynamic in trying to figure out how it is, and working with the localities, working with the counties and everybody, the developers, get around the table. Let's figure this out, because I think everybody's beginning to realize that none of this is working for any of us. So that's, I think, the purpose of rethinking.
Ann, thank you so much for your message. We suffer with CFP syndrome in Sussex, which is chronic finger pointing. Can you put your Del Dot hat on? The finger pointing is that the county claim, or excuse me, the Del Dot claims that the county is approving where they should not be approving. The county turns around and says, but Del Dot, you grant access regardless. Can you help us understand, does Del Dot have the ability to deny access for a development to a state road? And if so, what are the consequences?
It's tricky, to say the least, because if they don't do it right, then they get accused of a taking, and it goes into all those horrible issues. So you got to figure it out. And when I was there, I said, we can't do any more Route 1s, right? This is enough. So we put in something called, I forget what it was, but the effect was to deny access along Route 1 south of Dover. I think maybe 113, I can't remember. That's it. Yeah, that's what we put in place. And what that did was we just bought, 10 feet where we needed to right away. We owned it, so you can't get access to that anyway. But there was always other access. One of the state senators said, "What am I going to do in Bridgeville?" I said, "Don't worry, you got another access to get out on the road." And that's happened. I mean, you can see there's overpasses on Route 1 south of Dover now that didn't exist before. So that's protected that corridor. I won't say it's stopped development, but at least helps manage the transportation infrastructure. But absolute outright denial. I mean, I think there are ways. I've seen a letter. I didn't go back and look at it just before I came here, where the letter was basically no means no. And that was written about a project down here. I won't mention his name. But there are ways, but it's not easy. Because basically you're taking the value of the land and chopping it. And that's not something that's viewed favorably in legal circles. This gentleman up here, yeah.
One of your people on this committee that you're forming is Dee Durham, who's in Newcastle. And Dee Durham has been around a long time in Newcastle. And I was up in Newcastle for probably the first 30 years when I was working for DuPont. And she was very involved in the land management issues and is very active in this. My suggestion is that maybe we could invite her down to give some suggestions, because what's happened, of course, is Newcastle is shot. There's no more development there because it's already full. And that's exactly where we're headed to. So now what's also happened is that there are more restrictions in Newcastle than Sussex County has, and those things are connected. Now, this is a political minefield, but the point here is Dee has been through that and maybe can give some help in working that out. So she is a good expert.
She sure is, and I have already suggested that she and Jane Grunenbaum get together.
Good, good. You have a question here?
Hi, Ann. Just to let you know, you talk about, and I agree with you. Oh, I'm sorry. You mentioned about public transportation. I happen to like public transportation. I've been very fortunate in my life. I always had a dependable car. But you take Lewis. Most of the people here live in the city of Lewis, town of Lewis. They tried the bus system. Nobody's using it. So they're going to discontinue it. So, we live in a society, we're depending on cars. You talk about the parking lots, I could go on and on. You and I have a lot in common. I'm from New Jersey. What years were you at the New Jersey DOT? Okay, okay, so you weren't there with Whitman. Yep, yep. And obviously I live in Delaware now and I've had house and property and went to school in Massachusetts. Of those, well, let's take out Delaware. Of the two states, New Jersey, Massachusetts, which state do you think was more proactive, better at this planning of transportation in all the areas you touched on tonight, and how we can get people to talk to those people up there and what we can do here? I'm very well aware of town centers that they're trying to do in Jersey. They're really not well received. The medical thing, we have a very aging population throughout the whole country. So we talk about the problems here in Delaware. They're throughout the country. Not enough doctors, medical core stuff. It's not unique to Delaware.
No, it's not.
Okay, and it's only going to get worse everywhere. But so you left at Brendan Byrne.
Yeah.
Did you know Henry Luther?
Not that I.
First lottery director under Brendan Byrne. No.
I not remember. I don't.
But
remember.
you do know how many political appointments are in DOT. They didn't show up for jobs. But anyway, thank you.
We tried to. Sir, yes?
Oh, wait, here we go.
Well, let me just answer. I don't, after I left NJDOT, I mean, we were dealing with taking over the commuter railroad from Conrail. So we were trying to figure out how to keep it operating. So trying to figure out how to make it better was not the highest thing on our list at that point. Yeah, NJT. But since then, they have done transit villages around the stations and try and sort of make that. I don't know how well they're working, but I mean, we have some opportunities up north at Claymont, where we just spent a whole bunch of money redoing a rail station, and the one at Churchman's Crossing, down there by the racetrack. Yeah. No, it's rails to trails. Yeah, I know. That's a problem. Right. Well, I've seen the rail line go right down the middle of Rehoboth Avenue in Richard Cordray's Senate office.
The
that was a
point,
long time ago.
the
Anyway,
point
yes.
that I would like for us to consider is the elephant in the room, which is revenue or sources of revenue. The state is hooked on the turnover of homes, the resale.
Transfer
Uh,
tax.
Now, one appeal that Delaware has is low taxes, and that brought a lot of us here. We're getting the services and we're getting the plans that come with low taxes. The state's reactive because there's no planning organization, and we're in an operations bootstrap. So while this is all voluntary, what's going on, the people on the professional side that would need to be part of the planning process don't come for free. So we need to be willing to ante up for the dollars to pay for the services that we're crying for.
Yes, and I will also put on your radar the fact that the last time the gas tax got raised in Delaware, 1993. I did it. I did it. Oh, everybody was all in a panic. Oh, we're going to all lose our election. By the time the next one came around, they didn't even know what the price of gas is or what the gas tax was. Anyway, so we got to rethink how we pay for transportation, period. And that's going to be a huge issue. So there's all sorts of revenue issues out there. I'm trying to figure out with our little rethinking group who can come together and do a fiscal impact study on for what's happening to the state as a result of the way we develop ourselves now. That might open a few eyeballs. I haven't found anybody yet, but I'm working. So we'll see if we can get that done, and maybe that sort of, information can actually change minds if you have good information. So that's one that's on my list.
And I understand that, or at least I've been told, is it true that the county maybe Rush, you can help with this too, that the county depends more on that transfer tax. It's a bigger part of the county's income than it is of the state. Even though the state is receiving 2.5% and the county receives 1.5%, the county is more reliant on that income than the state.
I think that's true, although I haven't looked at the state's finances for a long time, so I can't be sure. Joe, do you know?
So the county has more incentive to keep the new housing or the turnover of housing. The other thing I wanted to ask was, do you think it's possible when we talk about infrastructure, could we in legislative ways or other ways start to include infrastructure into that category, forests and wetlands? So when we talk about infrastructure, those two things are part of that equation on a state and county level.
I'm probably not the right person to answer this question, but I think if we sort of look at the whole range of things in terms of climate resilience, that's infrastructure in a way to protect us. And maybe that's a way to think about it. Because without it, the problems we're having now will be exponentially worse.
It might be worth to go at it because I think as a part of the comprehensive plan this time around, they have to consider climate change and the resilience. So,
yeah, if I could address that real quickly, I think there's something very important to be said about natural infrastructure. And I think, again, our inland bays provide a perfect example. The value of our salt marshes, for example, for protection against flooding and storm surge is huge. If they disappear, and they are because of sea level rise, if they were all gone, it would cost billions of dollars to provide the protection that our natural resources provide for us right now. And there is an argument to be made that investing in protecting them and restoring them and maintaining them is a far better investment than asking the Corps of Engineers to build a multi-billion-dollar project to protect our communities, which of course is what we all would want. But then you ask yourself, how likely is it that those billions of dollars are going to show up? Because guess what? Manhattan has a similar need. Charleston, South Carolina has a very important need. New Orleans still has a need. And so by the time you get down that list of Corps of Engineers priorities, Sussex County is probably not going to be on that list. So I think it's very important, and it is a great opportunity in this larger context to think about what natural resources do for us and what values they provide, monetize them as best we can, and then to have that be part of the discussion. Home builders are actually very thoughtful about this in terms of how one would maybe think differently about how to develop land and making sure that forested areas and wetlands are actually valued inherently. And that could be through transfer of development rights or something of that nature, to make sure that owners of property that have those natural amenities keep them that way and still have value. And so that when the development takes place, those kinds of places are still protected.
Just to add, in addition to, I mentioned earlier, the state strategies, the state planning office is updating those now. The climate action plan is also being updated. And I have suggested to one of the people in Denrick, and she totally acknowledges it, that they never talked about land use in the initial climate action plan that they did. She said it's going to be this time. So let's make sure that it is. That's one of our jobs going forward. Land use better be in the climate action plan.
This will be our last question for the evening.
I think we have a golden opportunity coming up. It's called a comprehensive plan. It's got to be worked on. It's got to be developed. Here's the opportunity to iron out some of the problems. One of the examples I'll give you is the inconsistency in the interpretation of land use, where the comprehensive plan, the maps in the comprehensive plan are considered state law, but the county's interpretation is the text is not law. So that inconsistency needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved in saying the text is state law as well. That would make a tremendous difference, because right now they do a shell game in the county council and planning and zoning, where they'll say, let's rezone some property for some development of some type or other. And they say, well, we can't do it because the map is law, but the text, we can screw around with the text. And then once they've done that, but they've manipulated the text, then they'll turn around and redo the map. So again, the comprehensive plan's coming up for review. This county needs to get its act together, and more importantly, it needs to pay attention to the hundreds of people and the hundreds of comments that come in. The last time this went around, these kinds of things worked into the comprehensive plan, but they were largely ignored by county council and the planning and zoning commission.
Thank you. I just thought of an assignment to give you all. As you are assessing what you want to do, when you find inconsistencies, just like this gentleman said, make sure we know about it, because that can help us just knit everything together, because we're not going to find everything. You guys are on the ground living it every day. When you see inconsistencies that the state could change, make sure we know. That would be really helpful. Jill, thank you so much. Thank you all for
Give
coming
Anna
out.
And I hope you'll come back in a couple of months and give us an update.
Maybe that's too soon.
Okay, a couple. And we have this little token for you. Thank you so much.
Don't give up, guys. Keep going. Let's get it done. As the governor of Michigan would say, let's get S done.
Thank you for coming.